So here I am trying to build this game, right? And I'm super stupid. So if the code looks like dog shit, just forgive me because I'm learning. But yeah, so I have this basic drawing functions in this file called pixel buffer, and this is my main file. And I'm just trying to use like the macOS APIs to do all the calls to create the screen and stuff. Kind of like Casey's video, but with macOS. And since macOS only has Objective-C to do all its API calls, I have to implement some basic stuff. So there's like some OOP stuff with this implementation and stuff, which I don't really like. But anyways, that's besides the point. I have this uh, I have this main function that calls my file from this resource. And I have this is like my game loop, quote unquote. We have a timer, and this executes every time this timer gets fired, which is fired once every 60 frames a second, basically. It calls this 60 times a second, right? And these call my drawing functions. I was just implementing a few just to see if it works, and it works. And so today I was trying to load the image into the buffer that I created. Previously, I was just drawing some arbitrary values into the pixels and then just drawing that to the screen. But today I was trying to like load an image from my assets file uh, into the buffer. Pretty simple stuff. Shouldn't have taken me more than uh, a few minutes, maybe an hour at max, because I'm just learning stuff, right? And there's a lot of like jargon with relation to like, oh, I need to know what functions to use. So, for example, like CF release, CFCG image, CG stands for core graphics and all this stuff. But with like AI and stuff, you can just like search it in 2 minutes. So that shouldn't take too long. So, anyways, here we're basically taking the path, which is like, look at this. I mean, the path converted to a URL and then convert that URL to a source, and then just convert the source to an image, and then convert the image into this G image data, right? Which is basically global image data, uh, and which is like a uint8 pointer to pixel basically, which is this raw pixels, and then we convert that into raw pixels. So you need to do like one, two, three, four, five conversions just to get it from the image to pixel, which I feel like there should just be like at max two functions. One to like take the path and give me the image, and maybe that one into this constituent pointer, but I digress. Anyways, so I got these pixels, right? And then what I'm doing is iterating through every single pixel in the buffer, and then wherever the source X is basically our image dimensions. And if the buffer matches with the image dimensions, we get from image width and image height. We put them into this, put the appropriate colors into these 3 pixels, and then draw those into a pixel T. Pixel T is basically a stock pixel, it's red, green, blue. And this is 24 bytes, and then 1 byte for like the, oh, sorry, yeah, 1 byte for the alpha, which is basically the transparency level. That's what I think it is, at least. Didn't do too much of reading on that, but yeah. And I think this provides uh, the pixel data in BGRA, sorry, which is blue, green, red, and alpha. So that's why I run it through these three in reverse order, blue, green, red, and I store it in the pixel. It's very simple. I'm like, okay, this is fine. Yeah, it should be working, right? And this was supposed to like fill the entire buffer with some values, some default value in case I wanted to. I'm like, okay, and it should run. And I click run, and there's nothing showing up on my screen. I'm like, okay, maybe I messed up something. So I go back to my drawing. I uncomment this populate buffer, which basically draws the back buffer, an animated back buffer, to see if I messed up my drawing function somewhere. But no, it was drawing this, but not this. So I'm like, okay, let's step through the debugger and figure out where I went wrong. So I step through the debugger, and lo and behold, it shows my image up on the screen. I'm like, okay, what's wrong then? And then, so I spent a total of 6 hours trying to figure out why it's showing up in the debugger and why it isn't showing up when I run my script, which is this script, basically a shell script that runs my CMake file and uses this command, which is like the macOS way of running the app to run the game. And it's showing the back buffer, but it's not showing my new image onto the screen. So I'm like, okay, maybe I interpreted it wrong or something. But clearly it has to be working because when I step through the debugger, I see the image, I see the bytes, I see the memory getting filled with the bytes, and it should be showing up, but it isn't. And this is why you have to have common sense, and probably why I'll never be a good coder ever. But basically, this launch.json, right? I'm making it run the raw binary of this launch.json when I set up my debug configuration using LLDB. I think this is like the LLDB configuration for macOS. But yeah, it runs it directly from this. And what I was doing before was just passed this sprite value, slash asset slash sprite 001.png as a raw path over here, right? To this C path. I did like a string. There was a stretch string, asset slash this thing, or whatever, and asset slash sprite one, and I passed that to this C path. I basically uh, typecasted into this char start pointer because this function expects a char start pointer. I think um, one of these functions expects a char start pointer. File path, I think. Yeah, this one, right? Which one expects? Right. So const char star C string. Yeah. Okay. I go on tangents. Char star pointer. And I'm like, okay, it's loading. I see the file name and the debug files as well. So I'm like, okay, that makes sense. And initially, I was just passing this, and I'm like, oh, yeah, it has to be inside my build directory where the binary is, of course. So I go in here and I create a directory in this macOS folder called assets, and I push this into that. I'm like, yeah, it should work. And it did work, right? But it was only working during debugging. So I'm like, what? How did that make sense? Turns out, macOS, when you run open rpggame.app, it looks in the contents directory and not in the macOS directory. which is mind blowing to me because, like, why would you? I guess it makes sense, but it creates a binary in the macOS directory and it expects a binary there, but it looks for the assets in the or any file path, like the working directory is a content directory and not this macOS directory. Um, And yeah, so basically, it wasn't reading it when I ran open rpggame.app, but in the debugger, I was running it directly through the binary. So it was reading the file perfectly fine. And apparently, what's it called? The convention in Mac is to make a resources directory and then store whatever assets you want inside this resources directory. So, and if that is a convention, why doesn't it like automatically detect it from the resources directly? Well, like, why do I have to do this? So it's not even like I can just call the resources directory. I have to pass in the path as the resources directory using this path for Objective-C is like one of the worst things I've ever seen in my life. I had to pass in the path for resource as this and then create the directory. And I have to create this variable and then explicitly cast that variable. I'm losing my mind. So yeah, I spent an entire day doing this path thing. I don't know why it's so hard to like figure out if path not found. Like it doesn't explicitly tell you path not found. Like I don't know. Anyways, point being, I'm stupid as and I should never be allowed to code anything ever in my life.